Here we are again with 8 good minutes, and we're feeling nostalgic today on this episode. And as you know, every week we try to bring something a little different. And this week we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of our veterans at Hall Financial and where they come from and how they think about the industry today. We've got Mr. Brad Hine with us today. Mr. Hine, a very rare appearance for you on the podcast.
Yeah, I usually I'm moving the levers behind the scenes,
yes,
not in the front. There.
I like you up front here, though. And I'm going to talk about your marketing prowess in a minute.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. Miss Shannon Barquette, how are you today?
Good morning. I'm great.
Great to be with you, as always. You want to kick us off a little bit here and give us a little background on your history. I've got a few questions for both of you, and then we'll probably free flow it. But I want to talk a little mortgage history. Why don't you tell us how you got started and sort of your background in the business? I think that the folks will find it very interesting.
Okay. I started as an assistant to an appraiser. So I was appraising homes, taking photos, turning in reports. That went on for about 2 years. Then I worked for a mortgage company, and we don't have this anymore, but I was hired. I was the girl that sent out the verifications of employment by mail.
Yes.
And I ordered all the surveys. And in Michigan, we don't need that anymore. So that was my first job 21 years ago in the mortgage business.
It's amazing. And what would you say, this is a tough question. I'll pose this one to you too, Hein. What do you think are can you put your finger on the single biggest change you've seen in your 20 years? Do you have anything that comes to mind? I know for me, like a few things cross my mind. What crosses your mind?
For me, I would think it's appraisals, because right now an appraiser goes out to the home, electronic photos, he goes back, types up the report, and emails it. 23 years ago, we went out to the home. We didn't have the internet to tell us where comparables were. We used books. If you didn't have that county's book, you had to go to a real estate office and ask them,
Old school.
Can I see your books, your closed comp books? We took photos with film, so you had to write down 109 Smith Street has a red car in the driveway, so when you developed your film with 24 other photos, you knew what house was what. We glued the photos on to paper and mailed it back to the mortgage company.
It's unreal.
Yeah.
Those are true stories.
True.
The amount of effort associated with that, people wouldn't even appreciate it now.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing. Hi, Mr. Hine, so your background is technology and compliance, and amongst other things, you're sort of been around the business long enough to know how it all works. In fact, undercover, he's one of the best marketing guys you'll ever meet. He comes up with all the fancy names. He's on top of all the one-liners that you need to really market a company. He's done a great job with that. What's the single biggest thing you think has changed in your career in the business?
Oh, well, automation technology, I'd like to think I was involved in a lot of that as part of the industry. It changed, and it was added that to streamline everything.
Yeah.
So probably the biggest change would be the phone on your hip, right? The pictures, the verifications. In the past, you were pointing out, I started processing, not technology. I was a processor for 2 years at Michigan National Bank.
You think that he could work under you, Shannon? Could he do that job for you?
He'd be the best ever. I'd take Brad. Yeah.
I think anyone who ever wants to get in the mortgage business has to either be a processor or a loan officer sometime at the beginning.
Yeah.
In order to have the empathy and appreciate what has to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably the phone. Being able to upload PDFs or the new technology of the type of documents for verification and everything associated with it, because it's so fast. In the past, David, you remember, you used to handwrite apps.
Yeah.
You fill it out. The processor would key that information in, and your E looked like an I maybe or something.
Yeah.
And it was misspelt. And then the document showed up a few days later, but it didn't get submitted for 2 weeks. And if the processor didn't know what the underwriting requirements were, it get kicked back out after a week, only to go back in. So the turn times, the client's experience, they're like, oh, it's taking 5 days to get a loan. Well, the government told us we have to wait for 3, right? Right, because
that's right.
That's the way it is now. But back then it was 60, 65 days, and you'd hear from us then.
I think the biggest thing, and you both could comment on this, and mine's more of a zoomed out view, is when you'd meet there's no two loan scenarios that are ever the same. Everybody's got a different scenario. Self-employed, no money in the bank, tons of money in the bank, doesn't have a job. You have all these scenarios. And when I started in the business, you sort of had to piece it together and then figure out if the underwriter was going to be okay with it. Now you put it in the system and it tells you what you got to go get. It's the reversal, I feel like, because everything used to be a manual. Now they call it a manual underwrite. That's what they all were back when we all started. So to me, it's like the DU system and the system by which loans get approved. It's almost like Google. Like you type in the stuff and it tells you what to go do. That's what I think is the biggest. There's been a million changes, but that's one of the biggest ones, and that's technology. The technology has really transformed the industry from where we were before to where we are now.
Yeah. In fact, we don't want this to be a compliance podcast because you think about the redlining and stuff associated with a manual underwrite.
Yeah.
Where now it's meet the sheet. I really don't care your sexual or orientation or your color, your skin or anything. Nowadays, it's put in the data, get the response.
That's right, 100%. So Shannon, just real quick, you starting kind of at the bottom, working your way up, and gaining all the knowledge that you did. I always tell people that getting into the mortgage business is like, if you want it, you can do it. And people have a hard time understanding that. And I think realtors feel the same way about their industry too. If you want it, you can do it. I've never seen anybody come into the business and wasn't smart enough to be in the business. It's about a hunger. How'd you gain all the knowledge? You talk about starting by sending out verifications and now you're running the show here. How does that happen?
Well, I don't think you'll be shocked, but most people might be. So my first job, I worked in Dearborn, which was about an hour commute for me. So there was a woman that I met at work that also lived in my area. She was an underwriter. So I carpooled with her, and she would make me recite pages from back then for 4155. Is that right, Brad? Yeah. So I would read her. She would ask me questions. I'd have to find it in
It's a test every day on the way into work?
And home.
And home.
1,000-page manual. It's 1,000 pages, big manual. And she would say, income, overtime, what do you need? So that's what I did every day to and from work.
Okay.
And then asking questions. I ask a million questions, and I think it's my personality. I need to know the why.
Yeah.
You can't tell me this is the way you do it and just go do it. I need to know, why do I do it that way?
Yeah.
People all said be organized because you had a 3-ring binder and you would periodically remove page 35 through 36 and put in the new one. So your binder that was 1,000 pages, if it wasn't updated, it was worthless, right?
Yeah.
So
Correct.
people don't need to do that anymore.
Did you if you nailed all the questions, did you get to stop and get an ice cream or something like that? I was no treats, nothing. Just get them right, or else drop you off or something like that.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, that was it.
I used to. This is a funny story too. Same kind of thing. I remember driving in and kind of almost like saying what I'm going to say on the phone out loud on the way in to get, and I used to pull up and think people were looking in my window at me, kind of talking in my car there's nobody else in my car. So they're thinking, what's going on with this guy? Because I'm in there kind of just getting my routine going for how I'm going to talk during the day, on the sales calls. What's your crazy early story, Hein?
Crazy early story about coming into work?
Yeah, I don't know how you learned, whatever, some kind of crazy anecdote here. We got a minute to go. Or was it all smooth sailing?
No, but actually everything that I've learned came through adversity. I ran out of that role, or that there was an opportunity to move over here, and everything. If you work hard, right, and you take on that challenge, you become the subject matter expert eventually.
Yeah.
And that has happened for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
I've never been out of work. I just had someone else paying my bills, right? The check just had a different name on it.
I love it. Mortgage nostalgia. 8 good minutes goes by fast. Thank you both for being on this week. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Trip down memory lane.
Good old days.
Barquette and Hein.